moderator. As decentralized technologies continue to evolve, the idea of applying DAO principles to public sector governance is gaining traction, but it also raises big questions that concern trust, accountability, participation, and structure. I'm very excited to welcome our distinguished guests for this panel, who will now take a minute to introduce themselves briefly. So I would like to start with Dino. Dino, please take the floor to introduce yourself.
Thank you very much, Tonia. My name is Dino Dell'Accio. I'm the Chief Information Officer of the United Nations Pension Fund based in New York. I've been with the United Nations for almost 25 years, and my previous assignment were in IT auditing and cybersecurity. I was the Chief IT Auditor of the United Nations for 10 years, and in 2017, I was appointed as CIO of the UN Pension Fund, where I implemented, designed a blockchain-based solution for digital identity for proof of life. Thank you.
Thank you very much. We will continue with Gareth.
Hi, everyone. I'm from New Zealand, and great to be here. My name is Gareth. I'm the Special Projects Manager for Amnesty International New Zealand, and my background is a lawyer and an anthropologist. And the work we're doing in the DAO space is to develop a supporter coordination mechanism for our 10 million member global supporter community across 70 different sections, and also developing and designing a human rights token to incentivize positive impact and human rights protection and promotion across the world. So working on that at the moment. First port of call, we wanted to testing on a number of different chains, but first port of call is big thanks to the Cardano Foundation and Project Catalyst for supporting us. So yeah, that's me. Thank you.
Thank you very much. We will continue with Ram.
Hi, everyone. My name is Ram. I've been working in DAO governance and operations for a few years now. I currently work on the governance team at the Arbitrum Foundation, which is an operational steward to the Arbitrum DAO. The Arbitrum DAO has full control and ownership over the Arbitrum blockchains, which means it has full ability to upgrade the network and spend its treasury without needing to rely on anyone else. And for those of you who don't know what the Arbitrum blockchain is, it's a layer 2 blockchain built upon Ethereum that aims to make using Ethereum cheaper and faster.
Thank you very much. We also have a fourth speaker who has not yet joined. So I assume we can get started. And to warm us up, I would like to set the scene and ask each one of you
Did we lose Tanya? Okay.
I think she
looks like I don't hear.
Sorry.
That's okay.
Yeah, probably the connection. Sorry, I don't know if you heard the question. So I would like to ask each of you to contribute a couple of sentences on how you would define what a DAO is, and why do you consider it to be relevant for the public sector governance, and with Gareth and then with Ram.
Okay, sure. I think you said
for the same question.
Okay, sure. I think it's just a DAO is a obviously decentralized autonomous organization, but it's a radical invitation to reimagine public trust and participation, decision making, and transparency. I kind of view it almost like a revisiting of ancient consensus ideas, but with a modern technological layer, a mutable layer on top. So, you know, much more decentralized, equitable, and open access, building on network effects and, you know, and positive internalities and externalities. So that's the way I view a DAO for sure. Passing on.
Yeah, so my definition of a DAO is an organization typically underpinned by blockchain that can be operated, governed, and owned in a more democratic, decentralized, and transparent manner. Ultimately, they enable communities to take ownership and coordinate towards shared objectives without needing to rely on any centralized intermediaries. And they also enable communities to create nuanced organization and governance structures that best suit the needs of these shared objectives. And this is quite important because I don't think there is a one-size-fits-all DAO. All DAOs are and probably should be different. In terms of why I think this is important to the public sector, should I go on to that as well? Yeah. So yeah, I think it's important to, one, understand the macro environment we are currently in. So public trust in institutions is quite low. Many democracies feel increasingly dysfunctional, with citizens only being able to vote every few years, with having little input in between and growing polarization in parallel. And it's also important to understand the properties of blockchain, because I think this is also relevant to public sector governance. The first is that blockchain records are tamper-proof and publicly verifiable, making them ideal for governance processes like voting, as well as any resulting actions from a decision. And lastly, smart contracts. Smart contracts are like promise keepers. They are self-enforcing digital agreements that will automatically trigger an action if respective conditions are met. So this means that the outcomes of any decision can be autonomously executed. And this minimizes room for error and also ensures that the rules of any governance system are adhered to.
Thank you. Dino?
Yes, so I totally agree with the definition that have been given by my distinguished colleagues, panelists. What I would like to add is I believe that a peculiar characteristics of DAOs is that in addition to be decentralized, to be based on blockchain or certain technology, on supporting a specific type of organizational structure, is that they provide transparency, accountability, and auditability of the decision-making progress and the transaction and the allocation of resources. Personally, I think that the importance, the value proposition of the DAO it's the same whether we're talking about a public sector governance or private sector governance. I think in both domains, the need for accountability, for transparency is needed, because whether you are a shareholder of a private enterprise or whether you are a taxpayer or you are a citizen of a country and you expect that level of transparency, I think applies, of course, with the proper context in both domains. So I think finally the technology is mature enough to provide that kind of reliance on the evidence. So my background, as I alluded to before, is in auditing. And for me, the value added finally of using a technology such as blockchain that creates immutable ledger is finally to have the ability of a corroborating evidence that is not centrally controlled by one single entity or authority. Thank you.
Thank you. And we also have Pankar with us. Hello, Pankar. Welcome. Maybe you can take a minute to introduce yourself.
Yes, and I'm super sorry being late. I'm Pankar. I co-wrote a book called How to DAO, which was published by Penguin Random House this January. My other co-author is Kevin Oki, the founder of Gitcoin. I've been working in DAOs for last 3-4 years, going through Gitcoin, MakerDAO, Index Co-op, and Bankless DAO, and other smaller ones, both as a delegate and basically contributor, but also helping set up different DAOs and founding DAOs like a workout DAO, which is focused on like health and fitness. And my purpose with How to DAO, it's basically make sure that the DAO concept is well understood, that people know that it's actually a way to build a serious business. There are many advantages to using DAO concept. It's not just a child playground or some different schemes for like token launches. This is actually like a evolution of organization design, and that's what we want to show.
Very well. Thank you for this. In this context, would you like to say a couple of things of how you would define a DAO, as I have asked the previous speakers, and maybe also explain why you think this organizational approach would be ideal for the public sector?
Yes, of course. So I think honestly, like the DAO as a name, it's very limiting. So usually not using decentralized autonomous organization as a definition for it, because I think we evolved from it, and it's like the concept it's way broader, and the design space is way bigger than like we are limiting in the name itself. So DAOs for me, it's organization which use blockchain technology to be run, incentivize the contributors, and also keep things transparent and secure. Why it's good for the public sector? It's because you can get different voices into the decision making, and you can be very flexible with how you actually make sure that the right voices are heard. There are many concepts you can use, and because we are inherently digital, it's very easy for us to like create those systems and test those systems, what actually like how the outcomes are playing out for the people at large, but also that you are hearing the minorities. So like the some of the, I would say, issues with just a democracy itself, it's like it's the majority vote. Like you are basically hearing the majority, and then like you are forgetting sometimes about the minorities and like the different opinions. But when you have a DAO, you can design the systems, and you can also like test the systems to make sure that you are doing good for everyone within the community. So I think there is like a lot of things we can do, and we can be more flexible with our decision making and with our like hearing the public discourse, basically. So if we are representing some community, we know what we are representing, we hearing our constituents.
Thank you. In principle, all of you, through the different definitions that you have have indicated what are the most appealing qualities of DAOs for, in general, and for the public sector in particular. But what would you consider to be obstacles in terms of DAO governance in the public sector? Anyone who would like to answer?
Maybe I can take the floor. So, as I was alluding to before, I implemented digital identity solution at the United Nations. The solution went live in 2021 and has been in production for 4 years. As a former auditor, one of my biggest problems was assurance. How to provide assurance in terms of credibility, security, trustworthiness to a blockchain solution, especially when dealing with digital identity. And in my case, I have my board composed of represented 193 different countries. So as a former ISO auditor, I thought that ISO already had a certifiable standard, and that unfortunately was not the case. So I took upon myself to create a working group within the United Nations Internet Governance Forum called Dynamic Coalition, specific on blockchain assurance standardization. To practice what we preach, we set ourselves as a DAO in order to govern our decision-making process, our proposal submission, our compliance, to demonstrate in a transparent, accountable manner that we comply with the UN IGF requirement for multi-stakeholderism, for free participation, for the allocation, transparent allocation of the resources, and so forth and so on. There are many lessons learned that we gained in the last 2-3 years. Some of which are, for example, first and foremost, about the inconsistent regulatory framework when it comes to DAO. So long we are dealing only with governing proposal, voting on proposal, and monitoring the implementation, I think was relatively fine. But when we started looking at the process of receiving funds, donation, for example, and allocating resources and having the ability to move these resources, whether in fiat currency or in digital asset, we started to encounter the problem of the potential liabilities. We wanted to ensure, for example, that all the members of our DAO were adequately protected. And therefore, we started to encounter the issue of inconsistent regulatory regimes about what is the DAO, how is the DAO recognized, and what about its activities, and so forth and so on. Other lessons learned in terms of obstacles and limitations, for example, also to engage and maintaining engagement with the members. User-friendliness of the platform, the technical stability and the structure of the DAO itself, the voting mechanism, the possibility of delegating voting, the weights of the vote. For example, as I alluded to before, in the UNIGF, there is a strong requirement for allowing anybody to participate in the dynamic coalition, whether they want to be active participant or whether they only want to be observer. So we had to account for different type of roles and making sure that everybody had an equitable chance of participation. So I'm going to stop here, but just to mention some of the experience that we gained on the ground. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? Yes.
Oh, I'll just jump in and say that just backing up what's been said about the equity, the ability to join and equity. I think that also there's an issue around culturally informed design and whether we understand that different cultures, perhaps indigenous cultures or older cultures also have different perceptions of what consensus building might be. So at the moment we're really building on I guess perhaps Western centric model about consensus building. So, but for instance, say if I think about where I'm calling from, New Zealand, we have indigenous culture, Māori culture here, who have a collectivist consensus making mechanism, and it will involve a lot of cultural techniques and protocols, for instance, like mana, which is the integrity that you hold in your decision making ability. So DAOs are quite Western centric. They're quite difficult to embed more collectivist ideas. But there's solutions perhaps with multi-sigs and things like that that we can integrate. And also from our point of view, when we're thinking about rights and human rights from an Amnesty point of view, we've done a lot of work on this, and even the concept of embedding rights or modern digital rights within a framework, again, doesn't really think about the perception or conception of human rights from a radical framework. So from an older framework, if we think of the epistemologies of the global South, we're talking about human rights that needs to be wound back to a conception of kinship with nature and oneness with all being that goes back 500 years pre-colonization. The modern human rights idea, which would inform perhaps ethics and DAOs or AI, is a post-World War II model, which really looks at what happened after the war and looks at post-colonization. But a lot of cultures would like to wind that back for the 500 years. So I think we need to look at some of our core fundamentals. For us, just thinking also about the appealing nature of the DAO, we had a massive problem across 70 different countries. Sections, 10 million supporters couldn't talk to each other. So for instance, in New Zealand, we had 100 and something thousand people sign a Gaza ceasefire petition, but they couldn't talk to each other. So the incredible thing about a DAO is, for us, it solves a problem because we can have a network effect of people talking to each other, coordinating and crowdsourcing their own ideas about how to support or whatever it might be, the context, the value alignment within the DAO, how to come together to really crowdsource their own ideas and allow the network to raise its own consciousness and evolve itself through its own mechanisms. So for us, I think that's a super important point of DAOs and makes them really appealing for us. Thank you.
I would like to touch upon the culture point that Gareth mentioned, something I find very interesting. There's a book that I read previously called The Culture Map. I'm not sure if anyone else has read it, but it basically maps various business or working environment cultures on a spectrum, and they place various cultures on a spectrum across things like egalitarianism versus hierarchical leadership, consent-based versus top-down decisions, high context versus low context communication. And especially as DAOs are increasingly global organizations, there are certain cultures which I'd say are more in line with the values of decentralization and how DAOs operate, because many humans, they just expect to be led trust leaders, etc. And I think true decentralization, especially for those in the West, is quite a paradigm shift. Another thing that I'd like to point out is the operational complexities of running a DAO. So I think blockchains in general, they suffer from a lack of network effects as well as compatibility with traditional systems, which Dino alluded to with his legal comments. But I think ultimately, depending on whether or not the action resulting from a decision can actually be autonomously executed by smart contracts on a blockchain, for example, sending crypto or updating on-chain records, there will still be dependencies on specialized teams to actually execute the decision, because especially in the public sector, I'd imagine that a lot of the decisions that are made, they result to the real world, building things, sending fiat money, which you can't directly do on a blockchain. So there still will be dependencies on teams to operate. And yeah, it's important that there are systems in place to hold these people who are actually doing the execution accountable to what the wider organization wants.
Thank you. Pankar?
Yeah, I will be brief because I think most of the things was already mentioned, but I think like the regulatory clarity, it's super important because like people are just scared to build a house. Like it's like that's not good. Like I'm in the United States and like people are just like, why I would be building now? Because like I can be just exposed to like basically like different regulators, and like I don't know even if I'm taking risks or not because it's unclear. There are not precedents yet. So I think this is something we, as an industry, we just need to push for more clarity and make sure that like we are actually making this a safe way building DAOs. And there is a DAO coalition in United States which we are working with, and basically beginning a lobby in DC. It was mostly like these days all the lobbies were more like for crypto as like financial system, or like really like the tokenization type of thing, but not DAOs yet as an organizational structure. So I think we need to push a little bit there, and that's the limitation we are having right now, why maybe not more DAOs are getting created. And another thing I see as a big issue, it's over finalization. It's too financialized. It's like DAOs are not just about the finances. They are not just like raising money with the tokens. Like that's not the main purpose. Like yes, you can gather resources from all over the world. It's cool that you can like pool basically money and resources from everywhere. Definitely a good use case, but that's not the only thing we are doing here. We are not just like pumping the tokens. And also like the governance is set up that way. Like if I own more tokens, means I have more money, I have more to like more voice in the DAO. That's not great. We are creating disparities in the system basically, because like that's what we don't like at the traditional system, and we still have one person one vote there. But now in DAOs we have basically $1 one vote kind of concept, and I think like we need to move a little bit out of that. It might be okay in the business sense, like because you are stakeholder of the business, so therefore if you are a bigger stake you might have bigger say. However, if we are talking about like societal changes or DAOs which are more impact driven, I think that's where it really doesn't work very well, because we want to hear people from everywhere and we want to really make a decision for everyone, not based on their income or basically assets they own.
Thank you. This gives me a very good pass to my next question. How can we make decentralized governance in public sector more equitable? How we can safeguard that this can actually
Is it just me or we lost Tanya?
Yeah, I cannot hear her.
Okay, I think I got the gist of the question, so I can just kind of kick it off. So I've been working with Gitcoin a lot, and Gitcoin is famous for quadratic funding and quadratic voting. So but we also realize at Gitcoin, and when I'm talking to Gitcoin folks these days, like it's not solving for everything. That kind of solution is not good for every single problem. But I think just having this open design space, like quadratic funding or quadratic voting, it's solving for people even with like less assets but maybe higher conviction, like can actually be heard, and like even $1 matters in terms of like funding, because it's kind of like this show of confidence, and we are showing what communities we are driving towards it. So really like getting the wider community being heard, I think quadratic voting or funding, it's a great way to do it. And there are other systems we can implement, like conventional voting. It's also like, if I'm really convinced about that this is the one issue, I would put everything on it, because this is a really big deal for me. Like it's also shows kind of like how important can it be for someone. So from the traditional system where I'm voting, and let's say Switzerland is a good example for this, like there's a direct democracy, but I cannot show preference in terms of like this would be my priority over this. It's just kind of I'm voting for this, I'm voting for that, I'm voting for this. So there isn't, you cannot see like if I really care more about that particular issue or the other issue. So I think like playing around with that, like still having kind of the direct democracy, but playing around with like what is actually my level of confidence or level of priorities in stuff, like would be helpful. So in general, what I'm saying, there are so many ways we can govern. We just need to know what is our goal, what we want to achieve, and then we can design the system to support the achievement of that goal.
I would like to add there, so fully agree that governance mechanisms like quadratic funding, conviction voting, they help better represent the wants and needs of the wider community. But beyond that, it also comes down to access. So one, from a technological standpoint, DAO UX currently is not very intuitive or friendly. There's quite a steep learning curve to actually get onboarded onto these systems, which means that naturally some people might be excluded. So for those who aren't technologically literate, it's important for them to be able to participate either by going somewhere to vote in person, which is quite common with digital identity systems. You know, people without phones can still be registered in some way, but also through liquid democracy. So this is kind of where you can choose to directly participate in the democratic system, or you could choose to delegate your decision-making power to someone else. This is quite common in DAOs, maybe because people don't have as much time to commit to fully understand the whole picture, or B, because they don't, they can't be that bothered with keeping up with what's going on. Both are realities in DAOs today, and which also lead to voter fatigue and apathy.
Yeah, I'll just jump in there with a point, and thanks for all the input, everybody. I totally agree with you. Also, there's an issue around data sovereignty. We're talking about equity, because and this is where DAOs are very useful, but because say for the Māori community here, they want to know how their data is being stored, who has access to it, who owns it, who can leverage it, all these questions for their own data sovereignty, and those questions haven't really, in the governance of that platform, access to it, and the different delegated roles, etc., they still haven't been sorted out. So I think that's one area which needs to be sorted out. And also, if we're thinking about a humanitarian point of view, some people need freedom of expression from behind, say, authoritarian regime lines or whatever. They need to have freedom of expression, and DAOs are a great way to do that. And but the tools within the DAO, like across Web3 or blockchain, for instance, zero knowledge proofs, which can hide aspects of your identity, only revealing aspects that you need to, I think, are ways to bring identity equity into the identity space as well in DAOs. Thank you.
So if I can also complement the concept, the distinction that had been made by the other panelists. From my point of view, I think an important element is to build trust in the DAO itself and its mechanism, because as it was alluded to, there is a need to facilitate access, to allow people to participate and adopt and embrace a technology that to many is not familiar, especially also when we're talking about smart contract. And the reality, again, I go back, evidently, I'm biased because of my background. As of today, we do not have generally accepted standard and criteria to audit a DAO and to provide assurance vis-a-vis whether one solution, by contrasting, comparing it with the other, is more or less reliable than the others. And therefore, I think as a community and practitioner and subject matter expert, we all need to work towards the creation of that corpus of criteria, parameters, standard, best practices, whatever we want to call it, that would allow us to provide assurance to the larger community, so that they don't need to be guessing or making a leap of faith vis-a-vis the adoption of one DAO versus another. And in addition to the trust, we need to put into context the fact that most of the time, DAO and technologies such as blockchain do not work in isolation. There was an allusion before about digital identity. There are oftentimes connectivity with legacy system or with other emerging technologies such as artificial intelligence, such as biometrics. Again, in my case, I use all of three: blockchain, AI, and biometrics. So I think that also we need to have an appreciation for how these technologies are converging each other and how they basically complement each other by compensating the strength and weaknesses of each other. For example, AI, probabilistic, blockchain, deterministic, and how the two together can complement each other, provide that level of assurance and trust that I was alluding to before. Thank you.
Thank you very much. My connection is not very stable, so I missed your last sentence. But I just wanted to take you up on what you said about the emerging technologies convergence. And I would like to maybe the types of risks and responsibilities that we need to keep in mind when applying this in public governance. So I don't know, Dino, if you would like to start.
Yeah, and maybe very brief. I don't want to take the floor for too long. Indeed, I recently certified, for example, my application of digital identity in accordance with the ISO 42001 standard. We're very proud to be the first UN entity that achieved this certification of the responsible use of AI. The bottom line, a very simple word, and plain in English. System fundamentally works with data input and data output, and something happened in the black box. What we are asked to do today and to demonstrate is to provide transparency and explainability of what's happening in this process. And I think that it's incumbent upon us, that by those who are offering this solution, to make sure that, again, talking again and referring to some transparent sets of criteria, that we can provide that level of transparency as what are the data that are fed into the system, what happened to that system, and what is the outcome, so that we can explain the process and build upon that level of trust that we want to create. Back to you. Thank you.
Thank you.
She might have gone again. So, Tanya, there. I think just to touch on another point, I think that one of the issues that we have in DAOs and that still hasn't been solved is just the measurement of impact and the verifiability of impact. I think there's lots of promises and there's lots of ideas around value alignment, but actually getting all the way down the train to measuring and recording impact and then having that be translated into societal benefit, I think is still a little far away. I think we've seen the attention economy generate a lot of money for advertisers, centralized parties. Movement economy has probably done the same, but also now is looking to spread some of that wealth through DAO mechanisms. And I think we can do the same thing from our point of view for human rights. We can identify micro actions and advocacy skills and things that may be anti-racism actions or positive citizen reporting or positive outcomes in communities that we can reward through tokenization and things like that. So I think that we can actually flip the model. We can say to society, these are the outcomes we want to achieve for social purpose. Why can't we just use a mechanism like a DAO to identify what those indicators are for that impact, and then record direct to source through a DAO mechanism straight to public to generate their own income for doing good in society, and to actually support and crowdsource ideas to further and evolve those indicators of income. So that's an area I think that has got great promise. Thank you.
This reminds me of an acronym GIGA, garbage in, garbage out. So it really depends, like you were alluding to, on the quality of the information that you're actually uploading to the blockchain, and especially if it's relying on human inputs or oracles. If you can't guarantee that what you're actually recording is correct, then just because the data exists with permanence and transparency doesn't mean that it's good data.
Yeah, and I agree. And also, like, we are saying like DAOs are transparent, but like the data are not like human readable per se. Like, like everything gets on blockchain, but who actually understands it? Like if we are going into like the regular citizen, like how we actually provide that information and the transparency to them, so they don't need to really like look at the blockchain transactions to figure out who got maybe some money, payment tokens, or as Garrett, you mentioned, like rewarding this participation on like good causes, like how we make sure that like we are rewarding in the way that like also other people are aware that this is happening, and we as a community are doing this, so it's not just a token moving somewhere, but it's actually like presented in like in a human way. And I'm still believing in humans, so I don't think we need to like financialize or tokenize everything or verify everything. Like I feel like there's a lot of like human organizations which can be DAO, which are just inherently motivated to do good. And that's also, we should never forget, like they're like and this blockchain is blockchain for good, like there are good humans as well, which we can rely on and trust. It's not everything
Thank
about
you. I apologize because my connection was very, very bad. I've turned off the camera to make sure that I have enough bandwidth to continue the discussion. I don't see Dino. I don't know if we uh, uh, maybe because we only have very few minutes until the conclusion of this session. If you would like to look forward into the future and give us like an overview of what you would expect a successful public sector DAO to look like in the next few years, what are the small steps you would propose taking today in order to make it possible, to make sure that we will be able to succeed towards this type of governance in the future? Anyone feel free to take the floor.
I can start maybe. So I'm living in San Francisco, and we actually have a couple DAOs which are working on issues in San Francisco, like homelessness, drug abuse, and other. And I think this is a good start. Like start with small place, so not like nationwide, but like a rather like citywide or community wide. Start with like exact use case, or like what you want to achieve. So basically test it out in like a smaller environment and how that plays out, and then scale it up. So I think it like cities and communities start testing this like DAO concepts, and maybe engage with us who are already in the DAO space. We can help them design it. I think that's how the public sector can get like adoption and like some outcomes, and then we can scale it from there. So like just my in general advice, like we should not like target like nation wide DAOs, or like Washington like DC turning into a DAO, but like if the cities start adopting it, I think the federal government would also see the impact we are creating, and they will see that the people are happy with what we are doing. And because the people are the voters, then the politicians would also be more willing to actually adopt this new technology. So I think it's everything needs to be basically grassroots.
Yeah, I have a very similar opinion to Pankar, but I think the most important thing for DAOs to constitutionally agree on is what is governed by who and how. So starting with the what, right? Look at the existing decisions or activities that are currently taken by public sector and see which of these would be supplemented by more decentralized decision making. Ideally, these could be public services that are better placed in the hands of the people who use them. I think in general, with most services, it's better that the people who are most aligned with them, that are using them, are the ones who actually decide what happens to it. So maybe like what to do with the local park could be an experiment at a local scale that you could do. Then identify who should be able to vote on these decisions. Maybe it's people of a certain municipality or a neighborhood who can actually have a say because it pertains to their locality. And then identify the how. So how can this decision be made in a way that best represents what the community wants? So probably not a system where you can buy tokens and 1 token equals 1 vote. Maybe it's 1 person equals 1 vote, or your decision-making power is tied to the contributions you've previously made, or to your profession if you have like a subject matter expertise in something which would enable you to be able to make a more informed decision. So you can start to play with these things. It's good to look at how existing DAOs are being applied today. In my opinion, a lot of blockchains themselves are public goods, which are similar to public services. So maybe take inspiration from that. But you can also take inspiration from traditional decentralized forms of governance, which are tried and tested. Decentralized governance itself has been around for ages. Cooperative, sociocracy, holacracy, all of these concepts have been used at small scales, but have often struggled to scale. And I think this is something that the technology can actually help overcome. And then, once success is proven at the smaller scale, you can expand.
Thank you. And we will wrap up with Gareth, please.
Sure. I mean, I don't have a lot to add. I just think it's an exciting time for DAOs and blockchain and digital democracy. I think that it's in some ways it's us revisiting self-determination again for communities, whether it's a small hyper-local community or it might be the size of a city or a nation, and the ability to really go back to older ideas about commonality and the commons, and self-determination, equity, embedding cultural plurality into systems and different forms of indigenous and ancient and modern wisdom into decision making and consensus building. I think these are opportunities that we can't let go past. I think that they're going to be amazing if we can allow them to evolve, and we can see what comes out of people working together and visioning futures together. I think the raising of consciousness that's potential through a DAO, I think we're only at the very, very beginnings of it. So I encourage everybody to try a DAO out. I mean, I think Punkar's book, How to DAO, is a great place to start. So if you want to get involved in DAOs and look at the future, I think it's a future that's going to be here. It's going to take a little bit of time, but I think it's going to be amazing. So yeah, thank you to everybody.
Thank you so much, everyone. I think we are past our time. I really appreciate your participation and your insights. Hopefully we'll have an opportunity in the future to discuss further and maybe deeper. Thank you to Blockchain for Good for having us in this virtual summit. And we wish you a nice morning, afternoon, or evening, wherever you are. Thank you very much.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you. Good night.